So my name is Staley, pronouns she, her. I guess an interesting fact about me is that I can play the piano by ear. I don't read music, so I love music, but I don't read it, so I play by ear. I have really strived to make sure that my campaign is a microcosm for what the Carolina community should be like. And I think that my caring, my committed, and my can-do attitude is something that's very strong and something that will sorry. It will send waves throughout the Carolina community. I want to be very approachable. I don't have a typical background in leadership with student government, but I do feel like that I can represent each Carolina student. I feel like that I want to be a voice for the voiceless, and there's a lot of students that just don't know who to ask or just don't have a lot of knowledge on what student government is and what student government is involved in. And so I want to bring more acknowledgement to what student government is, and also just involve all students. I want there to be a balance of students who have never been involved in a campaign or who have never been involved in student government before, as well as those who have expertise in certain fields of student government, who can really lead this organization and make sure that they can be teachers for all students who may not have that experience. Absolutely. I mean, I think that we all know that historically, there's only been 3 African American student body presidents, and there's only been 5 female. And so I would love to not only, I know that I'm not the first, but I would hope that I'm not the last if elected. And I think that it starts with representation, and it starts with not only being visible, but also being heard at every level. And so I would really want to bring in students from all different communities on campus, and that's something that I've really tried to do with my campaign. I have students who come from different racial identities, different sexual identities, students who are first generation, students who are transfer, students who have a plethora of academic interests, and I've really tried to encompass all of that into my campaign, and again make that a microcosm for the broader Carolina community. So again, I think it starts with representation, but not just them seeing us in these positions, but also hearing us in these positions and hearing our experiences in these positions. Well, I think the biggest thing is that with the student body president position is that seat on BOT. And a lot of students aren't familiar or do not realize that we are granted that voting seat on BOT if elected. And so my biggest thing with making sure that we include them in the conversation at every meeting. And especially I would like that to extend to the grad and professional students as well, with creating a permanent seat on BOT for grad and professional students. I feel as though we can do all we can to be an advocate, but it takes having people having a seat at the table to really be heard and to make sure that the concern, they're felt that they are heard. And so I feel like that, just making sure that we have a seat at the table for all students, making sure that we are truly listening, making sure that we as student government are appearing approachable and appearing reachable and being visible, not being tucked away in the student government suite, but actually being out across campus and making sure that they know us, that they familiarize themselves with us, and that they feel comfortable coming to our leadership team and our executive team and sharing any concerns that they may have with us. I think that's going to be key in just making sure that we sort of bridge that gap and pull the Carolina community together. I definitely think that it all starts with being transparent and making sure that we are having conversations where administration is being as clear and concise, but also as open and honest with students as possible. With accessibility, I absolutely think that we should increase gender-neutral bathrooms across campus, as well as partnering with RHA to improve the housing, reforming housing and how housing is chosen, and not have it be based off a credit system. So I think those are two important goals, but just in general, with being able to have the conversation and being transparent, and making sure that the students that are directly impacted by accessibility or lack of accessibility across campus are being heard and are being brought to the forefront. So again, just making sure that we have that seat at the table, and those students know where to go and they feel comfortable talking to their student government, and especially their student body president, and really entrusting in me that I will be able to bring these concerns to the table and to our chancellor and to administration, and that I will adequately represent all of their concerns and make sure that they're heard. Carolina absolutely has a mental health crisis. We cannot sugarcoat it. We cannot downplay it. It's here. It's very real. And I think that this past semester and really this whole year, we've seen how much our students care about each other. But we need that from administration. We need that extra help. We know that students are willing to have conversations and be a helping hand to their peers, but we need that guidance from administration. And so I absolutely would love to initiate working with CAPS, making sure that CAPS is funded. We cannot be an administration that says go to CAPS for help or put CAPS on emails or in syllabuses across campus and know that CAPS is underfunded. And so definitely working with CAPS to make sure that it's funded, making sure that we diversify mental health specialists at CAPS, and also making sure that there is a long-term plan for students to attend CAPS so that they're not turned away, so that we lessen the restrictions that CAPS may have in turning away different circumstances that students may be going through. So making sure that ensuring that they can go to CAPS and be heard and not be turned away for different circumstances. So I absolutely want to have I would love to host a women and non-binary people of color conference. And with that, I want to have workshops, I want to have speakers, I want to have collaboration to where we can have these conversations and make sure that we are putting together a very diverse campus, as well as making sure that my administration looks like that microcosm of the Carolina campus, making sure that we have marginalized communities represented and making sure that we have them in leadership within our administration. I myself, being a Black woman, know firsthand the experience of being a Black woman at UNC and knowing that a lot of times my voice is silenced and overlooked. And so I think that, I know that I'm comfortable in my own skin and sometimes being the only person that looks like me in the room, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so we have to make sure that they are being able to see themselves not only in me but in leadership of student government, and continuing to secure funds to marginalized organizations across campus and making sure that we are partnering with those organizations so that those voices are continuing to be uplifted, because there's always room for improvement and there's always a way to do better and have more representation at every level. So.
Awesome. What's your vision for how the university should continue handling COVID-19 and kind of making instruction, on-campus living, and off-campus commuting more accessible for students?
I think we absolutely have to eliminate the financial barriers that are in place for testing on campus, as well as encouraging all students to be fully vaccinated and boosted. We live in a time where, when looking at science, that vaccines do work. And so if we want to be a safe but open campus, we need to do everything everything possible to make that happen. And so I think just encouraging students to be fully vaccinated and boosted will be at the forefront, as well as eliminating those financial barriers on campus for COVID testing, so that students don't have to seek elsewhere to go and get a COVID test, and potentially have financial troubles from other locations around Chapel Hill. It should be very accessible right here on campus, especially for on campus and for folks who are commuting to campus. I definitely wish that there was more help from administration in securing the N95 mask that student government, as well as organizations such as BSM, were able to distribute across campus to students. I think that we have to, everything starts at the top, and so in order for us to work together, we need to be able to have conversations with administration and have administration actually put action behind all of the emails that they're sending or all of the messages that they're wanting to send on campus in hopes of keeping this campus open and safe. So I think that, again, I would have loved to see more participation from administration in securing those masks. But I will work as student body president to make sure that, this is something that the students want, the students need, and this is going to keep us safe. So it absolutely needs to have the support of administration behind it. And again, with keeping us in the classroom, masks are important. And so I think that they absolutely should be required in all classes, big or small, because as we have seen with these variants, they are very transmissible. And we need to have the appropriate PPE materials to available to all students, and making sure that we can keep all students safe, because the virus affects every student differently, and we cannot base one student experience or one student's bout with COVID to another student's bout with COVID, because time has proven, well, the virus has proven to affect different communities differently. Well, I think it also ties into emotional health and wellness, and making sure that we have emotional health services for these survivors, and making sure that they feel comfortable talking to mental health specialists about their unfortunate situations and circumstances. And as well as, I actually currently serve on the search committee for the chief of police. And so I would love to better the relationship with UNCPD, to hopefully create a task force that students know where they can go to get resources if they've been in a sexual assault situation, but as well as just making them feel comfortable in talking about it with mental health specialists, as well as our police department, and hopefully collaborating with students. Because a lot of times that's not their first go-to. They're not going to run to police because their concerns are either downplayed or they're not taken seriously. So I think, again, just bettering that relationship with the student body and UNC police, as well as tying in the emotional health resources that are needed for sexual assault survivors, I think that's all going to play a key role in how we get those resources to them and make them aware of different, make them aware of the assistance that is available to them on this campus.
That ties into our next question, actually. So what do you think should be the role of UNC police on campus?
It has to be a role that is led with compassion. It has to be a role that is led with protecting students and creating tactics that do not harm students. They have to be willing to be open for resistance, but not create physical danger with that resistance. We know that we are on a campus that deals with a lot of events that lead to that lead to resistance and lead to a lot of backlash, especially with UNC police involved. And we need someone who is going to be accountable for their actions, who is going to admit when they're wrong, who is going to take a stand and say, we're not here to harm you, we're here to help you. And that person also has to be visible. I don't think I've ever come in contact with the chief of police as a student here. And of course, we see them at events, but there's just no sense of appealing. There's no sense of being approachable. And so I absolutely feel like that individual has to commit to being visible on campus. They have to commit to having real conversations with students on campus. And they have to hold their officers accountable for all of their actions, especially in the world of social media, where we have students who are recording everything and a lot of things, videos going viral. There needs to be a sense of, just a firm sense of compassion with leading their department. It has to be a role that is led with compassion. It has to be a role that is led with protecting students and creating tactics that do not harm students. They have to be willing to be open for resistance, but not create physical danger with that resistance. We know that we are on a campus that deals with a lot of events that lead to that lead to resistance and lead to a lot of backlash, especially with UNC police involved. And we need someone who is going to be accountable for their actions, who is going to admit when they're wrong, who is going to take a stand and say, we're not here to harm you, we're here to help you. And that person also has to be visible. I don't think I've ever come in contact with the chief of police as a student here. And of course, we see them at events, but there's just no sense of appealing. There's no sense of being approachable. And so I absolutely feel like that individual has to commit to being visible on campus. They have to commit to having real conversations with students on campus. And they have to hold their officers accountable for all of their actions, especially in the world of social media, where we have students who are recording everything and a lot of things, videos going viral. There needs to be a sense of, just a firm sense of compassion with leading their department. Well, one of the things with student body president, I feel, and I've been very vocal about, is that we have to make sure that student government itself is connected first before we can try and help the broader campus community. And so I really wanted to create a liaison position in our vice president's office that will link to the undergraduate senate, and making sure that the undergraduate senate and the undergraduate executive branch are working collaboratively. Because a lot of times, the executive and the legislative, they have to work together, they have to bond together. And when our student government is not on one accord, we cannot expect the broader campus community to be on one accord as well. So I think everything starts internally in making sure that the administration is all on the same page, and then we would be able to partner with the broader campus and making sure that students know what student government is. Students can have opportunities to join student government and don't feel as though they may or may not be welcomed because they don't have experience in student government or they don't have experience working in a leadership position. So I think, again, it comes with making sure that relations internally are fixed and there's a level of collaboration within student government before we can go out to the broader campus community, and ensuring that our campus is being represented by our student government that is working together and is working for a common goal. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is simply our campaign slogan, Your Legacy, Our Legacy, Carolina. And with that, I want to ensure that the next president that comes across or comes up in the coming years has the resources to be successful. I want every student that's at Carolina to one day wake up and say, hey, I think I want to be student body president, and be able to do that and be successful, regardless if they have a long track record of involvement on campus, regardless if they've ever ran a campaign before or not. But I want them to have enough awareness, and I want students to really focus on the importance of participating in these elections and getting out there and voting, and really asking yourselves, what does student government mean to you? Because I had to ask myself that before I ran. And my answer was making sure that there is leadership by students, for students, and that leadership is bridging the gap between the student body and the administration, because that is solely what that student body president position is. That's its first duty, is making sure that they are a vessel for students and for administration to come together and have conversations, sometimes uncomfortable conversations, but at least have conversations, and really be heard, and to make sure that all students are enjoying or are having the opportunity to have a Carolina experience that they can be proud of, and they can look back on and say, I feel like I've left my legacy here. I feel like I've left my heel print here. And making sure that if we are going to uplift marginalized communities, making sure that this position is a position that any student can feel capable of having, regardless of their racial backgrounds, sexual identity, economic status, academic interests, but making sure that this is a position that all students can see themselves in, and truly leaving that legacy, and being able to listen and lead in leaving that legacy. I'm a Libra. Yeah.